A millionaire encounters a mother crying in the rain with her two newborns and takes her into his home. Upon bringing her inside, his gardener reveals a secret about the mother. The rain battered the city mercilessly, turning the streets into turbulent rivers. Ethan Blackwood, a 45-year-old man whose fortune rivaled his reputation for coldness in business, was driving his luxurious car down a deserted avenue. His eyes, usually fixed on spreadsheets and contracts, now struggled to see through the rain-soaked windshield. That was when he saw her. A solitary figure at the edge of the sidewalk, hunched under the weight of something Ethan couldn't immediately discern. Intrigued, he slowed down, his fingers tapping on the steering wheel as he debated whether he should stop. After all, it wasn't in his nature to get involved in other people's affairs, but something about that scene compelled him to pull over. As he approached, Ethan realized the figure was a young woman. Her dark hair was plastered to her face by the rain, and her eyes— Ethan felt a tightening in his chest when he noticed the despair in that gaze. "Are you all right?" he asked, raising his voice to be heard above the roar of the storm. The woman lifted her face, revealing delicate features marked by exhaustion and anguish. That was when Ethan noticed what she was holding: two small bundles, protected only precariously against her chest, babies, newborn twins. I have nowhere to go," the woman answered, her voice almost a whisper lost in the downpour. Ethan hesitated. His rational mind told him to call social services to keep his distance. But something deeper, a part of him long dormant, urged him to act. "What's your name?" he asked, stepping closer. "Amélie," she replied, her eyes shifting between Ethan and the babies, as though she feared he might snatch them away at any moment. "Amélie," Ethan repeated, feeling the weight of that name. "I'm Ethan. Look, I have a home not far from here. You and your children can stay there until this storm passes." He saw the conflict in her eyes, her desperate need for shelter, battling against the fear of the unknown. "I promise you'll all be safe," Ethan added, surprising himself with the sincerity in his voice. Amélie looked at the babies, then at the flooded street, and finally back at Ethan. With an almost imperceptible nod, she agreed. The drive to Blackwood Manor was made in a silence heavy with tension. Through the rearview mirror, Ethan stole glances at Amélie, noticing how she gently stroked the babies, murmuring almost inaudible words of comfort. When they finally arrived, the imposing grandeur of the manor seemed to intimidate Amélie even more. Ethan guided her inside quickly, aware of the curious glances of the few staff members still awake at that hour. "Martha," Ethan called to his housekeeper, a middle-aged woman who had served him faithfully for years. "Please prepare the guest room. And bring towels and whatever else babies might need." Martha looked from Ethan to Amélie, her eyes widening slightly before nodding and hurrying upstairs. Alone again, Ethan found himself at a loss for words. Amélie remained near the door, as if she might flee back into the storm at any moment. "You're safe here," Ethan said softly, surprising himself with the kindness in his own voice. "No one will hurt you or the children." Amélie nodded, but Ethan could see she was still tense, her eyes scanning the luxurious room as if searching for hidden threats. "How old are they?" Ethan asked, indicating the babies with a gesture. 2 weeks, Amélie answered, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan felt a pang of something, compassion perhaps, imagining what could have driven a mother with such tiny infants into the streets on a night like that. Martha returned, announcing the room was ready. Ethan led Amélie upstairs, aware of how cautiously she moved, as if fearing each step might be a mistake. In the guest room, Amélie finally relaxed a bit, placing the twins carefully on the king-size bed. For the first time, Ethan could see the babies' faces clearly, a boy and a girl, both asleep, oblivious to the drama surrounding them. "They're beautiful," Ethan commented, surprised by the emotion in his own voice. Amélie looked at him, a flash of maternal pride shining through her fear. "Thank you," she murmured. "You must be hungry," Ethan said, suddenly aware he had no idea what newborns ate. "I'll ask Martha to bring something. Will you be all right here?" Amélie nodded, her eyes already returning to the twins. As he descended the stairs, Ethan found himself pondering the strangeness of the situation. In one night, his orderly mansion had become a refuge for a young mother and her newborn children. What had prompted him to do this? And more importantly, who was Amélie, really? Standing at the foot of the stairs, Ethan looked back toward the upper floor. He had a feeling his life was about to change drastically. The question was he ready for it? With a sigh, Ethan headed to the kitchen. Whatever mystery surrounded Amélie and her children, he was determined to find out. But for now, there were mouths to feed and a storm to wait out. Outside, the wind howled, as if announcing the arrival of something greater than a simple tempest. Inside Blackwood Manor, a new story was about to begin. Morning arrived at Blackwood Manor, bringing with it a clear sky and the damp scent of the earth after the storm. Ethan, accustomed to rising early, found himself in his study, his mind still filled with questions about the mysterious Amélie and her twins. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, expecting to see Martha with breakfast. To his surprise, it was Pierre, the elderly gardener, who entered. In his 70s, Pierre had been a constant presence on the estate for decades, his wrinkled face and calloused hands telling stories of countless seasons. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood," Pierre greeted, his French accent still evident after all these years. "I hope I'm not bothering you." Ethan frowned, intrigued. It was rare for Pierre to seek him out so early. "No, Cam, of course not. Is there a problem with the gardens?" Pierre hesitated, his gaze drifting around the room before settling on Ethan. "It's not about the gardens, sir. It's about the young woman who arrived last night." Ethan's interest was immediately piqued. "Amélie? What about her?" "I saw her this morning, sir, when she went outside for some fresh air with the babies," Pierre began, his voice low and laden with an emotion Ethan couldn't decipher. "I couldn't help but notice. Well, she looks a great deal like someone who once worked here long ago." Ethan leaned forward, his curiosity fully aroused. "Who? Isabelle Durand," Pierre replied, the name leaving his lips like a sigh heavy with memories. "She was one of the maids, about 30 years ago." The surname struck Ethan like lightning. "Durand? But that's Amélie's surname." Pierre nodded gravely. "Yes, Guillermo, sir. And it's not just the name. The eyes, the way she walks. It's like seeing a ghost from the past." Ethan stood, walking to the window. Outside, he could see Amélie strolling through the garden with the twins, her face serene for the first time since she'd arrived. "Tell me more about this Isabelle, Pierre." The old gardener sighed, sitting in the chair Ethan indicated. "Isabelle was young, maybe in her early 20s when she came to work here. Intelligent, beautiful, and determined. She had dreams, you know. She wanted to study, to become someone." "What happened to her?" Ethan asked, feeling that he was about to uncover part of the mystery. Pierre hesitated again, his gaze meeting Ethan's with surprising intensity. "She left abruptly, sir. One night she was here, and by the next morning she'd disappeared. There were rumors, of course. There always are." "What kind of rumors?" Ethan pressed, sensing that Pierre was holding back crucial information. "The kind that aren't repeated in polite company, sir," Pierre responded enigmatically. "But perhaps you should ask your mother about it. She was very involved in running the household at that time." Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. His mother, Eleanor Blackwood, rarely spoke of the past. What could she know about Isabelle's disappearance? "Thank you, Pierre," Ethan said finally. "You did well to tell me this." The old gardener rose, his face a mask of worry. "Sir, if I may be careful, sometimes the past is better left where it is." With those enigmatic words, Pierre departed, leaving Ethan deep in thought. He looked again through the window, observing Amélie. Now that he knew, he could see the resemblances Pierre had mentioned. But what did it all mean? Determined, Ethan left his study and headed to the garden. As he approached Amélie, he noticed how she instinctively pulled the babies closer. "Good morning," he greeted, trying to sound as friendly as possible. "I hope you slept well." Amélie nodded, a slight smile forming on her lips. "Yes, thank you." "Your home is very comfortable." Ethan hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Amélie, I've been thinking, you mentioned you have nowhere to go. I'd like to offer you a temporary job here at the manor. As a maid, Amelie's eyes widened in surprise. A job? But why? You barely know me. Ethan smiled, trying to ignore the voice in his head asking the same question. Let's just say I have a good feeling about you. Besides, Martha could use some extra help, especially with summer preparations coming. Amelie looked at the twins, then back at Ethan. And the babies? They can stay with you, of course, Ethan assured her. We have plenty of space, and I'm sure we can arrange a makeshift nursery. Tears began to form in Amelie's eyes. I don't know what to say. This is more than I could have hoped for. Ethan felt a surge of emotion he could not name. Part of him wanted to tell Amelie about Isabel, ask if she knew anything about her mother having worked here, but something held him back. First, he needed to find out more. So, what do you say? He asked, extending his hand. Do we have a deal? Amelie looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment. Ethan could see the conflict in her eyes, desperate need battling the fear of the unknown. Finally, she reached out and shook his hand. Yes, we have a deal. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Ethan, he corrected gently. You can call me Ethan. As they walked back to the manor, Ethan couldn't help but feel he was getting involved in something far greater than a simple act of charity. Pierre's words echoed in his mind. Sometimes, the past is better left where it is. But as he watched Amelie gently rock the twins, Ethan knew it was too late to turn back now. Whatever the secret involving Isabel Durand and the Blackwood family, he was determined to uncover it. What Ethan didn't know was that by opening his doors to Amelie, he had also opened the doors to a past many had worked hard to keep buried. The morning sun filtered through the silk curtains of Blackwood Manor, casting dancing shadows through the corridors. Amelie, with her hair tied in a simple bun and wearing the uniform provided by Martha, walked hesitantly through the imposing halls. Her eyes took in the luxurious details, a mixture of admiration and discomfort in her gaze. At the end of the corridor, an austere figure awaited her. Olivia Barrett, the chief housekeeper of Blackwood Manor for over 3 decades, was a woman of medium height, impeccably arranged grey hair and grey eyes that seemed to penetrate the soul. Her face, lined by time, wore an enigmatic expression as she observed Amelie's approach. "Good morning, Miss Durand," Olivia greeted, her voice firm and controlled. "I trust you're ready to begin." Amelie nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, ma'am. I'm eager to repay Mr. Blackwood's kindness." A flicker of something, disapproval, concern, crossed Olivia's face briefly. "Very well, let's start with the basic tasks. Follow me." As Olivia guided Amelie through the rooms, explaining routines and expectations, her eyes never left the young woman for long. There was an intensity in her gaze that went beyond mere supervision. In the kitchen, as Amelie learned where the utensils were kept, Olivia commented casually, "You remind me of someone who worked here a long time ago." Amelie paused for a moment, her hand hovering over a stack of plates. "Really? Who?" Olivia took her time responding, her eyes fixed on Amelie. "No one important. Just a passing resemblance, I suppose." An uncomfortable silence lingered between them, almost tangible. Amelie tried to focus on her tasks, but she felt the weight of Olivia's constant scrutiny. Later, when Amelie went to check on the twins in the makeshift nursery, she found Olivia standing at the door watching her. "They're adorable," Olivia commented, her voice softening slightly. "What are their names?" Amelie smiled, gently caressing each baby's face. "Sophie and Lucas." For a moment, Olivia's mask seemed to slip, genuine emotion flickering across her face. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by her usual reserve. "Lovely names," she murmured, before turning abruptly and leaving. Throughout the day, the tension between Amelie and Olivia did not go unnoticed by the other staff members. Whispers and curious looks followed the two women through the manor's corridors. Returning from a business meeting in the late afternoon, Ethan immediately noticed the strange atmosphere. He found Amelie in the library, carefully dusting the shelves. "How was your first day?" he asked, noticing how she startled at the sound of his voice. Amelie turned, a forced smile on her lips. "It was interesting, Mr. Blackwood. Everyone has been very kind." Ethan frowned, noting the hesitation in her voice. Everyone. Before Amelie could reply, Olivia appeared in the library doorway. Mr. Blackwood, I didn't know you were back already. Shall I prepare something for you? Ethan observed the exchange of glances between the two women, Amelie, tense and almost frightened. Olivia, her expression unreadable but clearly focused on the young woman. No need, Olivia. Actually, I'd like to speak with you in my study, if that's all right. Olivia nodded stiffly. Of course, sir, right now. Please, Ethan confirmed, casting a reassuring look at Amelie before leaving. In the study, Ethan sat behind his desk, watching Olivia, who remained standing, hands clasped in front of her. Olivia, you've been a constant presence in this house for many years, Ethan began, choosing his words carefully. Your loyalty and discretion have always been admirable. Thank you, sir, Olivia replied, her face a mask of neutrality. However, Ethan continued, I couldn't help but notice a certain tension between you and our new employee, Amelie. For a moment, something flared in Olivia's eyes, fear, anger, before she quickly suppressed it. I don't know what you mean, sir. I've treated Miss Durand like any other member of the staff. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Olivia's. Let's be honest with each other, Olivia. Do you know her from somewhere, or perhaps did you know someone who resembled her? The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken secrets. Finally, Olivia spoke, her voice low and controlled. Mr. Blackwood, there are things about this house and its history that might be better left in the past. Please trust me when I say that some questions are better left unasked. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Olivia's words echoed Pierre's, intensifying his certainty that there was far more to this story than met the eye. Olivia, he said gently, if there's something I need to know, something that could affect this family or Amelie and her children, I need you to tell me. For a moment, it seemed Olivia would yield. Her shoulders sagged slightly, and she opened her mouth as if to speak. But then, as if making a decision, she straightened. I'm sorry, sir. There's nothing to tell. If you'll excuse me, I have duties to attend to. Ethan watched her leave, his mind filled with unanswered questions. He knew he was only scratching the surface of a much deeper mystery. Outside the study, Olivia paused, her hand trembling slightly as she touched the doorknob. Her eyes closed briefly, as if battling an inner storm. Forgive me, Isabel, she whispered to the empty corridor, before composing herself and moving on, her footsteps echoing through the mansion that held so many secrets. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the corridors of Blackwood Manor, creating a play of light and darkness that seemed to reflect the secrets hovering in the air. Amelie, holding a feather duster, moved silently through the main hall, her eyes occasionally drifting to the imposing portraits on the walls. Olivia entered the room, her footsteps nearly inaudible on the thick carpet. She watched Amelie for a moment before approaching. Fascinating, aren't they? Olivia commented, causing Amelie to startle. The portraits, Amelie nodded, her eyes drifting to a particularly large painting of an elegant woman. Yes, they are. Is this Mr. Blackwood's mother? Olivia stepped closer, stopping beside Amelie. Yes, Eleanor Blackwood, a remarkable woman. Something in Olivia's tone made Amelie look at her curiously. Do you know her well? An enigmatic smile played on Olivia's lips. Oh yes, I've been in this house for a long time, Amelie. I've seen many things, met many people. Amelie hesitated a moment before asking, and have you known many other maids over the years? Olivia's gaze sharpened, fixing intensely on Amelie. Some. Why do you ask? Amelie shrugged, trying to appear casual. Just curious. It's such a large house. I imagine many staff members have come and gone. Olivia began walking slowly through the hall, her fingers lightly touching the furniture as she passed. Oh yes, many have come and gone. Some left more lasting impressions than others. Amelie followed, intrigued. What do you mean by that? Olivia stopped before a small portrait half hidden in a corner. It was of a young woman with dark hair and bright eyes. Sometimes, Amelie, people leave more than memories. They leave questions, mysteries. Amelie stepped closer, studying the portrait. There was something familiar in that face, something that made her heart race without understanding why. Who is she? For a moment, it seemed Olivia wouldn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the portrait, a myriad of emotions passing over her face. Someone who worked here a long time ago. Someone who... Well, that doesn't matter now. Turning abruptly to Amélie, Olivia changed the subject. And you, dear, what brought you here? It must have been difficult, coming with two small babies. Amélie felt a knot form in her throat. I needed a fresh start. Things weren't good where I came from. Olivia nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving Amélie's face. And the children's father. A flash of fear crossed Amélie's eyes. He's no longer in our lives. I see, Olivia murmured, her voice softening slightly. Sometimes, running away is the only option, isn't it? Amélie looked at Olivia, surprised by the empathy in her voice. Yes, and sometimes it is. For a moment, the two women stood in silence, each lost in her own thoughts. It was Olivia who finally broke the silence. Well, the past is the past. What matters is what we do from now on. Come, we still have much work to do. As Amélie followed Olivia out of the hall, she couldn't help casting one last look at the mysterious young woman's portrait. Why did she feel such a strong connection to that image? Elsewhere in the manor, Ethan sat in his study, reviewing documents when he heard a soft knock on the door. Come in, he called, expecting his assistant. To his surprise, it was Pierre, his face lined with worry. I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Blackwood, but I thought you should know. Olivia has been, well, she's been asking a lot of questions about Miss Amélie. Ethan frowned, setting his papers aside. What kind of questions, Pierre? The old gardener hesitated, choosing his words carefully. About her past, mainly. Where she came from, whether she mentioned anything about her family, and she's been spending a lot of time in the attic, rummaging through old boxes. Ethan stood, walking to the window. Outside, he could see Amélie crossing the garden, likely to check on the twins. Do you think Olivia knows something she's not telling us? Pierre sighed deeply. Mr. Blackwood, Olivia has been in this house a long time. She's seen things, knows things that perhaps are better left in the past. Ethan turned to face Pierre. You said something similar before, about the past being better left where it is. But what if that past is affecting the present? What if Amélie is somehow connected to all of this without knowing it? Pierre shook his head sadly. Sometimes, Mr. Blackwood, the truth can do more harm than good. But if you are determined to find out, perhaps it's best if you speak directly with Olivia. Thanking Pierre, Ethan was left alone with his thoughts. He knew there was a complex puzzle before him, pieces scattered across past and present, and at its center, somehow, was Amélie. Determined, Ethan left the study and went to find Olivia. He found her in the second-floor corridor, emerging from one of the guest rooms. Olivia, he called, his voice firm. We need to talk. The housekeeper turned, her face a mask of calm. Of course, Mr. Blackwood. About what? Ethan took a step closer, his eyes locked on hers. About Amélie. About this house's past. About what you know and aren't telling me. For a moment, Ethan saw a flicker of fear, guilt, in Olivia's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by her usual neutral expression. Mr. Blackwood, she began, her voice low and controlled, there are things about the past that... Before she could finish, a sharp scream cut through the air, coming from downstairs. It was Amélie's voice. Without hesitation, Ethan raced toward the sound, Olivia right behind him. As he descended the stairs, he couldn't help thinking that somehow, the past everyone seemed so eager to hide was about to come to light, whether they wanted it to or not. Whatever Amélie had found or seen, Ethan knew it would be the catalyst to uncovering the long-buried secrets of Blackwood Manor, and he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Dusk cast elongated shadows over the gardens of Blackwood Manor, transforming the well-tended topiaries into mysterious, almost threatening shapes. Olivia walked briskly along the stone path, her eyes fixed on the bent figure of Pierre, who was carefully pruning a rosebush. Pierre, she called, her voice low but urgent. "We need to talk." The old gardener straightened slowly, his tired eyes meeting Olivia's. With a sigh, he set his tools aside and gestured toward a nearby stone bench, partially hidden by a wisteria-covered trellis. Once seated, away from prying ears, Olivia began, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You saw her, didn't you? You know who she is?" Pierre nodded slowly, his calloused fingers distractedly toying with a fallen leaf. "Yes, I saw her. The resemblance is striking." "It's more than a resemblance, Pierre," Olivia insisted, leaning closer. "She's the living image of Isabel. It can't be a coincidence." Pierre closed his eyes for a moment, as if reliving long-buried memories. "What do you intend to do, Olivia? We can't just tell her. Or Mr. Blackwood." Olivia stood abruptly, pacing before the bench. "But we can't remain silent, don't you see? This changes everything. If Amélie is who we think she is—" "Stop," Pierre interrupted, his voice firmer than Olivia had ever heard it. "Think of the consequences. It's not just about us, or about Amélie. It's about the entire Blackwood family. Revealing the truth now could destroy lives." Olivia turned to face him, her eyes shining with a mix of frustration and fear. "And keeping the secret isn't destroying lives? Look at Amélie, Pierre. She arrived here desperate and with 2 babies in her arms. If she knew the truth, Pierre gently interrupted, it could be worse. Think, Olivia. She's found refuge here. Maybe it's better to leave things as they are." Olivia sat down again, the weight of the years and secrets pressing on her shoulders. "But for how long can we keep this secret? Mr. Blackwood is already asking questions. What if he discovers it on his own?" Pierre reached out, gently touching Olivia's arm. "Then we'll deal with it when it happens. For now, our priority must be to protect Amélie and the children. They are innocent in all this." Olivia nodded slowly, though hesitation was still visible in her eyes. "You're right, of course. But Pierre, what if history repeats itself? What if—" "It won't," Pierre interrupted firmly. "We won't allow it. This time we'll be vigilant. We'll protect Amélie, even if she doesn't know she needs protection." The two fell silent for a moment, the only sound the soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. Finally, Olivia stood, smoothing her apron with trembling hands. "Very well, Pierre. We'll keep our silence one for now. But keep an eye out. If anything changes, if there's any sign the past is resurfacing—" Pierre nodded gravely. "I'll remain watchful. And Olivia, try not to be so hard on the girl. She's been through a lot." Olivia gave a sad smile before turning back toward the manor. "I know, it's just that looking at her is like seeing a ghost, a constant reminder of our past mistakes." Meanwhile, inside the manor, Amélie wandered the corridors, feeling strangely restless. Something was in the air, a tension she could not name or understand. Occasionally, she caught fragments of whispered conversations that ceased abruptly when she approached. Stopping before a large window overlooking the gardens, Amélie saw Olivia and Pierre talking on a distant bench. Even from afar, she could sense the intensity of their discussion. For a moment, she had the strange feeling they were talking about her. "Everything all right, Amélie?" Ethan's voice startled her. She turned to find him standing a few steps away, concern on his face. "Yes, I was just admiring the view," she replied, forcing a smile. Ethan stepped closer, following her gaze to the gardens. "It's lovely, isn't it? Especially at dusk." Amélie nodded hesitantly. "Mr. Blackwood." "Ethan. May I ask you a question?" "Of course," he replied, turning his attention to her. "Is it just me, or is there something strange going on? Everyone seems so tense, especially when I'm around. Have I done something wrong?" Ethan felt a twinge of guilt. He'd noticed the atmosphere, but hadn't realized how it affected Amélie. "No, Amélie, you've done nothing wrong," he assured her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's just that, well, this house has a long history. Sometimes the past has a way of making itself felt in the present." Amélie frowned, confused. "The past? But what does that have to do with me?" Ethan hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I'm not entirely sure yet. But I promise you, Amélie, I will find out. And when I do, you'll be the first to know." Amelie looked into Ethan's eyes, feeling a wave of gratitude and something else she dared not name. "Thank you, Ethan. That means a lot to me." At that moment, one of the twins' cries echoed through the corridor. Amelie excused herself and hurried towards the sound, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. He turned back to the window, watching Olivia and Pierre return from the garden, each going their separate ways. Determination solidified in his chest. There were secrets in this house, secrets somehow involving Amelie, and he was determined to uncover them, no matter the cost. As night fell over Blackwood Manor, the whispers of the past seemed to echo through the corridors, promising that soon, very soon, the truth would come to light. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same. Night fell over Blackwood Manor, wrapping it in shadows and silence. In Ethan's study, the soft glow of a lamp created a cozy environment that contrasted with the palpable tension in the air. Amelie sat in a leather armchair, her hands clasped in her lap, while Ethan observed her from the other side of his desk. "Amelie," Ethan began softly, "I know it's not easy to talk about the past, but I feel we need to understand your story better. Do you feel comfortable sharing a bit more with me?" Amelie took a deep breath, her eyes focused on a distant point beyond the window. For a moment, it seemed she wouldn't answer, but then her lips parted and words began to flow, hesitant at first, then gaining strength. I never knew my father," she began. "My mother, Isabel, raised me alone. She never spoke much about him or our family. It was always just the two of us." Ethan nodded encouragingly, noting how the name Isabel made his heart beat faster. He remembered his conversation with Pierre about the old maid who shared that name. "We grew up in a small town," Amelie continued. "My mother worked as a seamstress. We didn't have much, but she always tried to give me the best she could." Outside the study, Olivia stood silently, her ear pressed to the door. Each of Amelie's words seemed to hit her like a physical blow, contorting her face with a mix of pain, guilt, and fear. "When I was 18, Amelie went on, her voice trembling slightly, "I met Victor. He seemed so charming, so different from the other boys in town. My mother, she didn't like him. She said there was something in his eyes that worried her." Ethan leaned forward, his expression a mix of compassion and intense interest. "And what happened?" Amelie closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering courage. "I didn't listen to her. Victor promised me the world, talked about moving to the city. I was so eager to escape that small life. We married just 6 months after we met." On the other side of the door, Olivia stifled a sob. Her legs trembled, and she had to lean against the wall to keep from collapsing. "At first, it all seemed like a dream," Amelie continued. "But then, things changed. Victor started drinking Mordas, getting angry over anything. The first time he hit me, he begged for forgiveness on his knees the next day. I forgave him, of course. I thought it was a one-time incident." Ethan felt a wave of anger rising within him. But it wasn't. Amelie shook her head, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. "No, it got worse over time. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought things would improve. For a while they did, but then..." Her voice failed, and Ethan resisted the urge to stand up and hold her. Instead, he offered her a handkerchief, which she accepted with a grateful smile. "The night the twins were born," Amelie continued after a moment, "Victor was out drinking. When he came home and saw there were 2 babies, he was furious. He said we couldn't afford 2 more mouths, that I'd done it on purpose to ruin him." Outside, Olivia felt her heart breaking. The similarities between Amelie's story and Isabel's were painfully clear to her. He said he'd get rid of one of them," Amelie whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's when I knew I had to run. That very night, I took the babies and left without looking back. I traveled for weeks, always looking over my shoulder, afraid Victor would find us." Ethan stood, unable to contain himself. He walked to Amelie and knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "You're safe here, Amelie. I promise I'll do everything in my power to protect you and the children." Amelie looked into Ethan's eyes, seeing sincerity there. "Thank you, Ethan. You don't know what that means to me." Outside, Olivia moved away from the door, her face a mask of determination. She knew she had to act, to do something to protect Amelie and the children, but how to do it without revealing the secrets of the past? Back in the study, Ethan helped Amelie to her feet. "You've been incredibly brave, Amelie, but there's something that still intrigues me. You never tried to contact your mother. Couldn't she help?" A shadow crossed Amelie's face. I tried, but when I returned to our hometown, I found out she had moved away years ago. No one knew where she went. It's as if she'd vanished." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together in his mind, forming an image he still couldn't fully comprehend. "Amelie," he said gently, "you mentioned your mother's name is Isabel. Do you remember her maiden name?" Amelie frowned, thinking, I'm not sure. She rarely talked about the past, but I think once I heard someone call her Miss Durand. Why? Does it mean something to you? Ethan tried to keep his expression neutral, though his heart pounded. "No, nothing. Just curiosity." Escorting Amelie back to her room, Ethan couldn't stop thinking that there was much more to her story than she knew. The coincidences were too many to ignore. An Isabel Durand who had worked at the manor years ago, disappearing mysteriously, and Amelie arriving with such a similar story. Ethan knew he stood on the verge of a discovery that could change everything, not only for Amelie, but for the entire Blackwood family. But he also knew he had to be careful. Rash revelations could cause more harm than good. As he prepared to sleep that night, Ethan made a silent promise. He would discover the truth, no matter the cost. And when he did, he would ensure Amelie and her children finally found the peace and security they deserved. Little did he know that, elsewhere in the manor, others were making similar promises, each with their own motivations and secrets. The truth was about to come to light, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same at Blackwood Manor. The sun had barely risen when Ethan found himself in the dusty attic of Blackwood Manor. Old boxes and sheet-covered furniture created a labyrinth of forgotten memories. Determination in his eyes, he began searching the family's archives, looking for any mention of Isabel Durand. Olivia, having noticed Ethan's unusual agitation that morning, followed him silently. She watched from a distance, her heart pounding with each box he opened, each document he examined. Her wrinkled fingers clenched nervously at her apron, torn between wanting to intervene and fearing the consequences. After hours of fruitless searching, Ethan found an old employee register. His eyes scanned the yellowed pages until they stopped at a name: Isabel Durand, maid, 1994-1995. "Found you," Ethan murmured, a mix of triumph and apprehension in his voice. Unable to restrain herself, Olivia stepped forward. "Mr. Blackwood, did you need something up here?" Ethan turned, surprised. For a moment, he considered hiding the book, but something in Olivia's gaze gave him pause. "Olivia, you worked here in 1995, didn't you?" The housekeeper nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the book in Ethan's hands. "Yes, sir, I was here." "Then you must remember Isabel Durand," Ethan pressed, watching Olivia's reaction closely. A flicker of emotion, fear, sadness crossed Olivia's face before she could hide it. "Isabel, yes, I remember her. A quiet young woman, a hard worker." "What happened to her, Olivia? Why did she leave so abruptly?" Olivia averted her gaze, her hands trembling slightly. I'm not entirely sure, sir. One day she was here, and the next, she was gone. There were rumors, of course, came on, but what kind of rumors? Ethan insisted, taking a step closer to Olivia. Before she could answer, the sound of something breaking echoed down the corridor below. Olivia seemed relieved by the interruption. "I should check that, sir. Excuse me." Ethan watched her hurry off, and his mind buzzing with more questions than answers. Downstairs, Amelie knelt on the library floor, gathering the shards of an old vase she had knocked over accidentally. Her hands trembled slightly, not out of concern for the vase, but for what she had found inside it. Hidden among the dried flowers was an old photograph that captured her attention. In it, a young woman smiled at the camera, her eyes bright and full of life. But it wasn't the woman's beauty that made Amelie's heart race. It was the uncanny resemblance to herself. "My God," Amelie whispered, turning the photo over. On the back, in delicate handwriting, were the words, "Isabel, summer of 1995. The sound of approaching footsteps made her quickly tuck the photo into her apron pocket. Olivia entered the library, her eyes sweeping over the scene. "Is everything all right here, Amelie? I heard something break." Amelie stood, holding the vase's fragments. "Yes, I'm sorry. I was clumsy and knocked this vase over. I'll pay for it, of course." Olivia shook her head, coming closer to help clean up. "Don't worry about it, dear. Accidents happen." As they picked up the pieces together, Amelie could feel Olivia's eyes on her, studying her intensely. "Olivia," Amelie began hesitantly, "you've been working here a long time, haven't you?" The housekeeper nodded, her expression cautious. "Yes, for decades. Then you must know a lot about this house's history, about the people who have passed through it." Olivia stopped what she was doing, her eyes meeting Amelie's. "Why the sudden interest, dear?" Amelie hesitated, her hand unconsciously touching the pocket where the photo was hidden. I feel curious. I guess. This house seems to have so many stories." "Some stories," Olivia said softly, "are better left in the past, Amelie. It's not always wise to stir up old wounds." Before Amelie could respond, Olivia stood abruptly. "Come, let's clean this up, and then you can help me with lunch." There's much work to be done. Following Olivia out of the library, Amelie couldn't shake the feeling that there was more behind her words, a veiled warning she did not fully understand. Throughout the day, Amelie noticed how Olivia always seemed to be around, subtly directing her away from certain areas of the house, especially the attic and some locked rooms on the third floor. That night, when everyone had retired to their rooms, Amelie stayed awake, the photograph of Isabel in her hands. The similarities were undeniable, the same face shape, the same eyes, even the same smile. Could this be her mother? If so, why was there a photo of her in Blackwood Manor? In the next room, Ethan was also awake, the old employee register open on his lap. He compared the dates. Isabel had left the manor abruptly in late 1995. If Amelie was 30 now. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. The dates matched perfectly. Isabel must have left the manor pregnant with Amelie. But why? And more importantly, who was the father? Ethan closed the book, his mind a storm of theories and possibilities. He knew he was close to unveiling a secret that could change everything, not just for Amelie, but for the entire Blackwood family. Out in the dark corridor, Olivia paused before Amelie's door, her hand raised as if to knock. For long moments, she stood there, torn between the desire to protect the secrets of the past and the growing need to do what was right. Finally, with a heavy sigh, she lowered her hand and slipped away silently. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself. "Tomorrow, I will tell everything." Blackwood Manor slept that night, its corridors echoing with the whispers of secrets on the brink of revelation. Dawn would bring not only a new day, but potentially a new reality for all its inhabitants. Breakfast at Blackwood Manor had become a silent dance of furtive glances and barely concealed tension. Ethan, seated at the head of the table, carefully watched the interactions between Amelie and Olivia. The young mother fed the twins, her attention alternating between the babies and the housekeeper, who moved about the room with almost mechanical efficiency. Ethan noticed how Olivia seemed to gravitate constantly near Amelie, her eyes never straying far from the young woman. When Amelie made to stand and fetch more milk from the kitchen, Olivia practically leapt to serve her. "Let me do that, dear," Olivia insisted, her voice overly casual. "How have your hands full with the little ones?" Amelie frowned, clearly confused by the excessive attention. "Thank you, Olivia, but I can manage. Actually, I'd like to explore more of the house today. There are so many rooms I haven't seen yet." Olivia's smile faltered for a moment. "Oh, there's not much to see, really. Many rooms are closed for cleaning or renovations," Ethan intervened, his curiosity piqued by Olivia's obvious evasion. "Actually, Amelie, I'd be happy to show you the house. Perhaps after lunch?" The look Olivia gave Ethan was a mixture of alarm and pleading. "Mr. Blackwood, don't you have more important matters to attend to? Your business can wait," Ethan finished firmly. "Besides, it's high time we took a proper inventory of the house." Amelie smiled, genuinely excited for the first time in days. "That would be wonderful, Ethan. Thank you." After breakfast, Ethan watched as Olivia practically pushed Amelie into the gardens, insisting the fresh air would be good for the babies. Taking advantage of the moment, he headed quickly to his father's old study, determined to scour the family's archives before Olivia could intervene. However, rounding a corner, he nearly collided with Pierre, who was carrying a toolbox. "Ah, Mr. Blackwood," the old gardener greeted, his wrinkled face creased with worry. "I was just looking for you." Ethan stopped, noting the seriousness in Pierre's tone. "Is something wrong, Pierre?" The elderly man set his toolbox down, glancing nervously around before speaking in a low voice. "Sir, I couldn't help noticing your recent investigation into the past." Ethan crossed his arms, his posture becoming defensive. "And," Pierre sighed deeply, seeming suddenly much older, "Mr. Blackwood, I have served this family for many decades. I've seen many things, heard many secrets, and I've learned that some secrets, some are better left buried." "Pierre," Ethan began, his voice tense, "if there's something you know, something about Amelie or her mother—" "Please," Pierre interrupted, raising a trembling hand. "I understand your curiosity, your desire to help, but sometimes the truth can cause more harm than good. Think about the consequences, not just for you, but for everyone involved." Ethan felt a surge of frustration rising within him. But what if Amelie has a right to this truth? What if it could help her somehow? Pierre shook his head sadly. Or it could destroy her. And others? "Just be careful, sir. Very careful." With those enigmatic words, Pierre picked up his toolbox and walked away, leaving Ethan even more determined to discover what everyone was so desperate to hide. Meanwhile, in the gardens, Amelie strolled with the twins, her mind full of questions. She noticed how Olivia always seemed to appear casually whenever she approached certain areas of the property. "Olivia," Amelie finally called, her patience wearing thin. "May I ask you a question?" The housekeeper approached, a forced smile on her face. "Of course, dear. What is it?" Amelie hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Why do you seem so nervous around me? Have I done something wrong?" Olivia's smile wavered, a shadow passing through her eyes. "Oh no, dear. Of course not. I just worry, that's all. You and the children have been through so much." "But it's more than that," Amelie insisted. "It's as if you're constantly watching me. And there are parts of the house you clearly don't want me to see." "Why?" Olivia avoided her gaze, twisting her apron nervously. "Amelie, dear, there are things about this house, about the past. It's not always good to dig into old stories." "What stories?" Amelie pressed, her curiosity now fully awakened. Before Olivia could answer, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted them. Ethan emerged from a side path, his face determined yet calm. "Ah, there you are," he said, his tone deliberately light. "Amelie, how about that tour of the house now?" Olivia stepped forward, as if to place herself between Ethan and Amelie. "Mr. Blackwood, I really think—" "It's all right, Olivia," Ethan interrupted firmly. "I'm sure you have other duties to attend to. I'll look after Amelie and the children." The tension in the air was palpable as Olivia glanced between Ethan and Amelie, clearly conflicted. Finally, with a defeated sigh, she nodded stiffly and withdrew, casting one last warning look over her shoulder. Amelie watched the housekeeper leave, confusion and frustration on her face. "Ethan, what's going on here? Why is everyone acting so strangely?" Ethan hesitated, torn between his desire to protect Amelie and his growing certainty that she deserved to know the truth. "Amelie, there's something I need to show you. Something that might change everything." As they headed back into the manor, Ethan couldn't help but notice how Amelie instinctively tightened her hold on the twins, as though sensing an impending revelation that could shake her world. Upstairs, hidden in the shadows, Olivia watched the scene unfold, her heart heavy with the weight of secrets long kept. She knew the moment of truth was at hand and feared the consequences it would bring for everyone at Blackwood Manor. Afternoon advanced slowly at Blackwood Manor, the sun casting long shadows through its silent corridors. Olivia paced back and forth in her small room at the back of the house, wringing her apron nervously. Decades of secrets weighed heavily on her shoulders, threatening to crush her. At last, making a decision, she set out resolutely toward Ethan's study. Upon reaching the door, she hesitated, her hand hovering over the knob. Taking a deep breath, she knocked softly. "Come in," Ethan's voice sounded from the other side. Olivia entered, finding Ethan bent over a pile of old documents. He looked up, surprised to see her. "Olivia? Is something wrong?" The housekeeper opened her mouth, words long guarded, ready to spill forth. But then, like a film reel playing in her mind, she saw images of the past, promises made, lives at stake, unpredictable consequences. I just wanted to know if you needed anything," she stammered, stepping back. Ethan watched her closely, noting her agitation. "Olivia, you seem upset. Is there something you want to tell me?" For a moment, it seemed she would yield. Tears welled in her eyes, and she took a hesitant step forward. "Mr. Blackwood, there are so many things." But then, as if a curtain had fallen, Olivia composed herself. "It's nothing, sir. Forgive me for bothering you." Before Ethan could press her, she turned and left quickly, leaving him even more intrigued and frustrated. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, Amelie was preparing the twins' snack, humming softly. Olivia entered, still shaken from her near confession to Ethan. "Oh, Olivia," Amelie smiled, "you arrived just in time. Could you help me with these bottles?" The housekeeper nodded silently, moving to assist. As they worked side by side, Amelie continued speaking, her voice soft and thoughtful. "Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like to grow up in a house like this, with a father present." She paused, sadness touching her voice. "My mother never talked much about my father. Sometimes I wonder if he even knew I existed." Olivia froze, the container of powdered milk trembling in her hand. Amelie, noticing, frowned. "Olivia, are you all right?" The housekeeper blinked rapidly, forcing a smile. "Yes, dear, I just remembered something. It's nothing." Amelie studied her for a moment, her curiosity piqued. "Olivia, you knew my mother, didn't you? When she worked here?" The container slipped from Olivia's grasp, spilling white powder onto the floor. "Oh dear," she murmured, quickly bending down to clean up the mess. "Let me help," Amelie offered, kneeling beside her. "No!" Olivia exclaimed, more sharply than intended. Seeing the shock on Amelie's face, she softened her tone. "I mean, don't worry. I'll handle this. You should focus on the babies." Amelie rose slowly, her expression a mix of confusion and suspicion. "Olivia, what is going on? Why does everyone in this house act so strangely when I mention my mother or my past?" The housekeeper avoided her gaze, concentrating on the cleanup. "I don't know what you're talking about, dear. Perhaps you're imagining things." Before Amelie could insist, one of the twins' cries came through the baby monitor. With one last puzzled look at Olivia, she left the kitchen. Alone, Olivia leaned against the counter, breathing heavily. "Oh, Isabel," she whispered to the silence, "what have we done?" Upstairs, Ethan stood before his mother's door, Eleanor Blackwood's room. After a moment of hesitation, he knocked firmly. "Come in," came the gentle reply. Eleanor sat in her favorite armchair by the window, a book forgotten in her lap, her eyes, still sharp despite her age, fixed on Ethan. "Mother," he began, closing the door behind him, "we need to talk." Eleanor arched an eyebrow. "About what, dear?" Ethan approached, his posture tense. "About the past, about Isabel Durand." The name seemed to hang in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Eleanor showed no outward reaction besides a slight tightening of her lips. "What about her?" she asked calmly. "You know very well," Ethan pressed. "She worked here. She left abruptly. And now her daughter, Amelie, is in our home. It can't be a coincidence. Eleanor closed the book in her lap, her fingers absently stroking the cover. Ethan, dear, the past is complicated. Things happened. Decisions were made. What things? What decisions? Ethan insisted, frustration growing. Mother, please, I need to know the truth. For a long moment, Eleanor regarded him, as if weighing her next words. Finally, she sighed. Some secrets, Ethan, are kept not out of malice, but for protection. Sometimes the truth can cause more harm than good. Ethan knelt beside the armchair, taking his mother's hands in his. But what if this secret is hurting people now? Amélie deserves to know about her past, about her family. Eleanor gently withdrew her hands, her gaze distant. There's more at stake than you can imagine, my son. Please trust me when I say it's better to leave the past where it is. But Mother... Enough, Ethan, Eleanor interrupted, her voice suddenly firm. I will not discuss this further. The matter is closed. Ethan rose slowly, frustration evident in every line of his body. This isn't over, Mother. I will discover the truth, with or without your help. As he left the room, Eleanor watched him go, a mixture of love and worry in her eyes. Oh, my dear, she whispered to the empty room, if you only knew, if you only knew. In the corridor, Ethan paused, his mind racing. His mother's evasions, Olivia's strange behavior, the undeniable resemblances between Amélie and Isabel all pointed to a secret deeper than he had first imagined. Determined, he headed to his office. It was time to piece together all the clues, no matter how painful the final picture might be. Twilight cast elongated shadows through the corridors of Blackwood Manor, creating an almost ghostly setting. Ethan walked with determined steps toward the servants' quarters, his mind focused on a single mission, to confront Olivia. He found her in the small staff sitting room, meticulously folding a stack of freshly laundered sheets. At his entrance, Olivia froze, her eyes widening with a mix of surprise and apprehension. Mr. Blackwood, she greeted, her voice trembling slightly. Can I help you with something? Ethan closed the door behind him, his gaze fixed on her. Actually, Olivia, you can... May we talk? Olivia nodded hesitantly, placing the last sheet on the pile. Of course, sir. About what? About the truth, Ethan replied, his voice firm. About Isabel Durand, about Amélie, and about what happened in this house 30 years ago. Olivia's face paled visibly. She sat on the edge of a worn armchair, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Mr. Blackwood, I don't know what you're talking about. Ethan stepped closer, his frustration mounting. Enough evasions, Olivia. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Your strange behavior around Amélie, your reactions whenever Isabel's name is mentioned. You're hiding something, and I demand to know what it is. For a long moment, Olivia remained silent, her gaze fixed on the floor. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. There are things, Mr. Blackwood, that happened in this house, things we swore never to reveal. Who swore? Ethan pressed. You and who else? Olivia raised her eyes, a deep sadness evident. Your mother, Pierre. All of us who were here at the time, we made a promise to protect the family. Ethan knelt before her, his voice softening. Protect the family from what, Olivia? What could be so terrible? The housekeeper took a deep breath as if gathering her courage. Your father, Mr. Blackwood. Richard was a complicated man. He had secrets. And Isabel. At that moment, a slight creak of the door made them both turn abruptly. There, partially hidden by shadows, was Amélie, her eyes wide with surprise and confusion. I'm sorry, she stammered. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was looking for you, Olivia. The twins need... It's all right, Amélie, Ethan interrupted gently. Please, come in. Perhaps it's better if you hear this too. Amélie hesitated, then stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind her. She sat in a nearby chair, her eyes darting between Ethan and Olivia. Olivia seemed to have aged 10 years in the last few minutes. She looked at Amélie with a mixture of guilt and tenderness. Oh dear, there's so much you don't know. About what? Amélie asked, her voice trembling. About my mother? Olivia nodded slowly. About your mother? And about this house? About the summer of 1995. Ethan stood, walking to the window. The sun had set completely now, plunging the gardens into deep shadows. What happened that summer, Olivia? What does my father have to do with all this? The housekeeper closed her eyes for a moment, as if reliving painful memories. When she opened them again, there was a renewed determination in her gaze. Richard Blackwood was a powerful, charismatic man, and Isabel, well, she was young, beautiful, full of dreams. It was inevitable, I suppose. Amelie gasped, raising her hand to her mouth. You're saying that my mother and Ethan's father... Olivia nodded sadly. They had an affair. It was brief but intense. And then... Then what? Ethan pressed, his voice tense. Then Isabel discovered she was pregnant, Olivia concluded softly. The silence that followed was deafening. Amelie seemed frozen in place, shock etched on her face. Ethan turned slowly from the window, his eyes on Olivia. You're saying that Amelie is my sister? Olivia hesitated, her gaze flicking between Ethan and Amelie. Half-sister, to be precise. But yes, that's the secret we've kept all these years. Amelie rose abruptly, her legs shaking. This can't be true. My mother would have told me. She wouldn't hide something like this from me. Olivia stood, extending a hesitant hand toward Amelie. Dear, your mother wanted to protect you. But Amelie stepped back, shaking her head vigorously. No, I don't believe it. There must be some mistake. Before anyone could stop her, Amelie ran from the room, leaving Ethan and Olivia in charged silence. Ethan turned to Olivia, anger and confusion mingling in his gaze. Why now, Olivia? Why reveal this after so long? The housekeeper sighed deeply. Because you both deserve to know the truth. And because I fear the past is about to catch up with us in ways we can't control. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Olivia walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. There's more to this story, Mr. Blackwood. Much more. But for tonight, I think we've had enough revelations. As she left, Ethan remained motionless, his mind a whirlwind of emotions and unanswered questions. Outside, the wind howled, as if the very elements were reacting to the truths just revealed. In her room, Amelie curled up on her bed, holding the sleeping twins close. Silent tears ran down her face as she struggled to process what she had just learned. Her entire life, everything she believed about herself and her family, had been turned upside down in a matter of minutes. Blackwood Manor, once a refuge, now felt like a labyrinth of secrets and lies. As the night wore on, its inhabitants lay awake, each struggling with the implications of long-buried truths now painfully exposed. Morning arrived at Blackwood Manor, bringing a tense silence. Ethan hadn't slept, spending the night in his study, searching through old family documents. His eyes burned with fatigue, but his mind remained sharp, driven by the need to uncover the whole truth. That's when he opened a long-forgotten drawer and found something that made his heart skip a beat. A yellowed envelope, addressed to his father in the delicate handwriting he now recognized as Isabel's. With trembling hands, Ethan opened the envelope and began to read. Dear Richard, by the time you read this, I will have already left. I cannot continue living this lie, knowing that I carry your child. Yes, Richard, I'm pregnant. Our brief moment of passion will have consequences neither of us foresaw. I'm not writing to ask for anything. I know you have your family, your reputation to protect, but I can't allow this child to grow in the shadow of secrets and lies. He or she deserves a chance at a normal life, away from judging eyes and cruel whispers. Forgive me for leaving like this, but it's the only way. I hope one day you'll understand and perhaps forgive me. With love even now, Isabel. Ethan let the letter fall onto the desk, his mind reeling. It wasn't just that Amelie was his half-sister, but the depth of the relationship between his father and Isabel shocked him. This hadn't been just a fleeting affair. There were real feelings involved. His thoughts were interrupted by a firm knock at the door. Before he could answer, Amelie entered, her eyes red from a sleepless night, but shining with determination. Ethan, she began, her voice trembling but firm, we need to talk, Now. He nodded, gesturing for her to sit down. Amelie, No, she interrupted. I speak first. I spent the whole night thinking, reliving every memory, every story my mother told me. And now, looking at you, at this house, there's more than what you're telling me. I demand to know the whole truth. Ethan sighed deeply, picking up the letter from the desk. You're right. There is more. Much more. And I think it's time we lay everything on the table. At that moment, Olivia appeared at the door, her face pale and drawn. Mr. Blackwood, Amelie, Mrs. Eleanor is asking to see you, both of you. Exchanging tense glances, Ethan and Amelie followed Olivia to Eleanor's room. The Blackwood matriarch sat in her favorite armchair, looking as though she had aged years overnight. As they entered, she raised her eyes, a mixture of resignation and determination in her gaze. Please, sit down, Eleanor said softly. It's time for you both to know the entire truth. Amelie hesitated a moment before sitting beside Ethan on the small sofa. Olivia stood near the door like a silent sentinel. Eleanor took a deep breath before beginning. It all started in the summer of 1995. Isabel arrived here as a young maid, full of dreams and hopes. Richard, my husband and Ethan's father, was going through a difficult time in business. He found in Isabel a confidant, someone who listened without judging. She paused, her eyes filling with unshed tears. At first, I pretended not to see. I thought it was just a phase, that it would pass. But then I realized it was deeper. Amelie leaned forward, her voice barely audible. They fell in love. Eleanor nodded sadly. Yes, dear. It was more than a simple affair. Richard was considering leaving everything, his family, his business, to be with Isabel. Ethan gasped, shocked. But that would have destroyed our family, our reputation. Exactly, Eleanor continued. That's when I made a decision that haunts me to this day. I confronted Isabel, told her that if she truly loved Richard, she should leave. Staying would only bring pain and scandal to everyone. Amelie stood abruptly, her eyes flashing with anger. You drove her out. You forced my mother to go. Eleanor shook her head, tears now running freely down her cheeks. No, dear. I gave her a choice, and a considerable sum of money to start a new life far away. I thought I was doing what was best for everyone. But she was pregnant, Ethan interjected, holding up the letter he had found. She knew she was carrying father's child. Eleanor closed her eyes as if in pain. Yes, she told me before leaving. I begged her not to tell Richard. I promised to ensure she and the child would never suffer want. Amelie fell to her knees before Eleanor's armchair, her hands gripping the arms. Why would my mother accept this? Why hide the truth from me all these years? Eleanor placed a trembling hand over Amelie's. Because she loved Richard enough not to want to destroy his life, and because she loved you, Amelie, more than anything. She wanted you to have a chance at a normal life, away from the whispers and judgments that surely would have followed if the truth came out. Ethan approached, placing a comforting hand on Amelie's shoulder. So that's why you reacted so strangely when Amelie arrived. You recognized her immediately. Eleanor nodded. The resemblance is incredible. It was like seeing a ghost from the past. Olivia finally spoke, her voice thick with emotion. We all swore to keep the secret, to protect the family, to honor Isabel's wishes. Amelie rose slowly, her legs shaking. My entire life was built on a lie. No, Eleanor said firmly, holding Amelie's hand. It was built on love. Your mother's love for you, her love for Richard, and yes, even my misguided love for my family. We made difficult choices, some wrong, but always with the best intentions. A heavy silence followed, charged with conflicting emotions and newly revealed truths. Ethan looked at Amelie, seeing her not as a stranger, but as family. What do we do now? He asked softly. Amelie took a deep breath, looking around the room, at Eleanor, Olivia, and finally at Ethan. Now we start rebuilding, with the truth as our foundation. Eleanor stretched out her hands, one to Ethan, the other to Amelie. Together? With hesitation, but also a spark of hope, Ethan and Amelie accepted her outstretched hands. In that moment, amidst the ruins of long-held secrets, the first steps toward healing and forgiveness were taken. Blackwood Manor, which had so long been a repository of secrets, now became the stage for a new chapter, one of honesty, reconciliation, and perhaps a chance for redemption for all involved. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows of the Blackwood Manor library, illuminating a surreal scene. Ethan, Amelie, Eleanor, and Olivia were gathered, the weight of recent revelations hanging heavily in the air. Ethan broke the silence, his voice hoarse with emotion. "So, we're half-siblings." He looked at Amelie, searching for a sign of how she was processing it. Amelie nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on a distant point. "It's a lot to take in." Eleanor rose from her armchair and walked to an old desk in the corner of the room. With trembling hands, she opened a drawer and took out a yellowed envelope. "Amelie," she said softly, "there's something your mother left for you. She asked me to give it to you when the truth came out." Amelie's eyes widened, a mixture of hope and apprehension on her face. She took the envelope with reverence, as if it were precious and fragile. "I'll let you read it in private," Eleanor offered, but Amelie shook her head. "No," she said firmly. "I think we all need to hear this." With trembling fingers, Amelie opened the envelope and unfolded the letter. Isabel's elegant handwriting filled the page, and she began reading aloud. "My dear Amelie, if you are reading this letter, it means the truth I tried so hard to protect has finally come to light. My heart breaks at the thought of the confusion and pain you must be feeling now. But my beloved daughter, you must know that every decision I made, every secret I kept, was driven by the deepest, purest love a mother can have for her child. The summer I spent at Blackwood Manor was the happiest and most painful time of my life. I met your father, Richard, and experienced a love I never thought possible. But that love came with a high price. Richard had a family, responsibilities, a legacy to protect. And I was just a young maid with dreams bigger than reality allowed. When I discovered I was pregnant with you, my world collapsed and rebuilt itself in an instant. I knew I couldn't stay, couldn't drag Richard into a scandal that would destroy everything he built, but I also knew I couldn't give up the precious gift growing inside me. Eleanor, Richard's wife, offered me a way out. At first I was furious, hurt, but over time I realized that she too was acting out of love for her family, love for the man we both cared for. I accepted her offer not out of cowardice or greed, but because I saw in it the chance to give you, my Amelie, a life free of the whispers and judgments that would surely follow if the truth were known. Every day away from Blackwood Manor was a struggle. Each time you asked about your father, my heart broke a little more, but seeing you grow strong and free made it all worth it. My dear daughter, I ask you not to judge harshly those who kept this secret. Eleanor, Olivia, all of them carried this burden out of love for you, for Ethan, for the Blackwood family as a whole. And Ethan, my heart fills with joy to think that you have a brother. I hope that you can overcome the initial shock and find one another as family. Amelie, you have always been and always will be the greatest love of my life. Everything I did for you. I hope that one day you can understand and perhaps forgive. With all my love, forever, Mom." When Amelie finished reading, tears ran freely down her cheeks. The silence in the room was palpable, broken only by Eleanor's and Olivia's soft sobs. Ethan was the first to move, approaching Amelie hesitantly. "May I?" he asked softly, opening his arms. Without a word, Amelie fell into his embrace, letting years of pent-up emotion flow. Eleanor stood, her legs trembling. "Amelie, Ethan, there are no words to express how sorry I am. My actions, though well-intentioned, caused so much pain." Amelie pulled away gently from Ethan, facing Eleanor. Did you truly love my father?" Eleanor nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "With all my heart. And it was that love that led me to make difficult decisions. Decisions I now see were flawed in many ways." Ethan placed a comforting hand on his mother's shoulder. "We all make mistakes, Mother. What's important is how we choose to move forward." Olivia, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. "I must also beg forgiveness," she said, her voice trembling. I was complicit in this secret for all these years. I saw Eleanor's silent suffering, Richard's emptiness in his final year, and yet I kept quiet. Amelie approached Olivia, taking the housekeeper's hands in hers. You were protecting everyone, in your own way. But at what cost? Olivia asked, guilt evident in her voice. Ethan looked around the room at the faces marked by pain and regret. The past cannot be changed, he said firmly. But the future is still in our hands. Amelie nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. Ethan's right. I spent so long searching for a family, for answers, and here they are, not the way I expected, but still family, Ethan finished, extending his hand to her. Eleanor took a hesitant step toward Amelie. I know I have no right to ask this, but do you think you can ever forgive me? Amelie looked at the letter in her hands, then back at Eleanor. My mother chose forgiveness. I think I can honor her memory by doing the same. Amelie's words seemed to release something in the room. The tension that had hovered so long began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of possibility, of new beginnings. Ethan turned to Olivia. Thank you, he said simply, for taking care of all of us, even while carrying such a heavy burden. Olivia smiled through her tears. This family, you are my life. You always have been. As the afternoon light warmed the room, the four remained together, sharing stories, tears, and surprisingly, even a few laughs. Amelie spoke of her childhood, about the small gestures of Isabel that now took on new meaning. Ethan shared memories of his father, seeing them now through a different lens. Eleanor, encouraged by the openness of the others, began to speak of her early days with Richard, of the man he was before the weight of secrets changed him. And Olivia, for the first time in decades, felt free to express the love and devotion she felt for them all, without the filter of duty and secrecy. When night finally fell, there was a palpable sense of change in the air. The wounds were still fresh, the revelations still echoed in their minds, but there was also hope. Hope that from the ashes of long-buried secrets, a new and stronger family bond could emerge. Ethan was the last to leave the library, pausing at the door to look back. The room, which for so long had been a repository of secrets, now felt different, lighter somehow, as if the shadows of the past were finally beginning to dissipate. With a small smile, he turned off the lights and closed the door, ready to face whatever the new day would bring. Together as a family, the months that followed the revelations brought a palpable change to Blackwood Manor. What had once been a place weighed down by secrets and unspoken tension now pulsed with a new energy of renewal and hope. Ethan and Amelie, initially hesitant in their new relationship as half-siblings, gradually began to build genuine bonds. Their mornings now started with walks through the manor's gardens, talking about their lives, sharing childhood stories, and discovering many similarities that went beyond their physical resemblance. You know, Ethan remarked on one of those mornings, I never imagined having a younger sister would be like this. Amelie smiled, adjusting one of the twins in her arms. And I never thought I'd have an older brother to annoy me. They laughed, the ease of their interaction a testament to how far they had come in such a short time. The manor itself underwent a transformation. Inspired by the new family dynamic, Ethan decided to renovate the place. Long-closed rooms were opened, heavy curtains replaced with light fabrics that let in the sunlight, and the garden got a playground for the twins. It's as if the house can finally breathe, Olivia commented one day, watching the changes with approval. But the greatest transformation came in the form of a project Ethan proposed during a family dinner. I've been thinking, he began, looking around the table at the faces he now considered his expanded family, about how we can honor Isabel's memory and also do something meaningful. Amelie leaned forward, intrigued. What did you have in mind? A foundation, Ethan replied, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. The Isabel Durand Foundation, dedicated to helping single mothers and women in vulnerable situations. The silence that followed was broken by Eleanor's soft sobs. It's perfect, Ethan, she said, wiping her tears. A wonderful way to honor Isabel and help others who might be going through similar situations. Amelie, visibly moved, nodded in agreement, Mother would have loved this. She always wanted to help others, even when we barely had enough for ourselves. In the months that followed, the Isabel Durand Foundation took shape. Ethan used his contacts and resources to establish the framework, while Amélie became the heart of the operation. Her personal experience and natural empathy made her the perfect person to lead the support programs. On a sunny afternoon, Amélie was conducting a support group session for single mothers in the newly renovated East Wing of the Manor, now transformed into a community center. "I know it seems impossible now," she said to the group of women who looked at her with a mix of hope and despair. "But you are stronger than you imagine. Each of you has within you the strength to overcome these challenges and create a better future for your children." Outside the room, Ethan watched proudly. He never ceased to marvel at his sister's strength and compassion. Meanwhile, Eleanor found her own redemption through the unconditional love she gave to the twins. Where once there had been guilt and regret, now there was joy and purpose. She spent hours playing with the children, reading stories, and singing lullabies long forgotten. "Grandma," Sophie, one of the twins, called one day, "tell the story of the brave princess again." Eleanor smiled, pulling the little girl into her lap. "Of course, my love. Once upon a time, there was a very brave princess named Isabel." Olivia, for her part, finally allowed herself to relax into the role she had always desired, but never felt worthy to fully embrace, that of a maternal figure to everyone in the house. Freed from the weight of secrets, she blossomed, her love and care enveloping them all like a warm blanket. One morning she found Ethan in the kitchen, looking lost as he tried to prepare breakfast for the twins. "Oh, let me help with that," she offered, gently taking the spoon from his hands. Ethan smiled gratefully. "What would we do without you, Olivia?" She paused, looking at him with shining eyes. "It's good to be needed, to be loved." "You always were," Ethan replied softly, giving her a spontaneous hug. Time passed, and before they knew it, it was the twins' first birthday. Blackwood Manor, once a place of whispers and secrets, was now alive with laughter, music, and the aroma of festive food. In the grand hall, decorated with balloons and colorful streamers, the family gathered to celebrate. Amélie, radiant in a pale blue dress, watched lovingly as Sophie and Lucas, dressed in matching outfits, tried to take their first steps, encouraged by Ethan and Eleanor. Olivia entered carrying a huge cake, its candles lit like beacons of hope. Everyone gathered around, their voices joining in a chorus of birthday wishes filled with joy and emotion. When the candles were blown out and the applause faded, Ethan asked for everyone's attention. "A year ago," he began, his voice filled with emotion, "our family was shaken by revelations that could have torn us apart. But look at us now." He gestured broadly, encompassing everyone in the room. "We found strength in forgiveness, healing in love, and a new purpose in honoring Isabel's memory. Today, we celebrate not just Sophie and Lucas's birthday, but also the rebirth of our family." Amélie stepped forward, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "And the creation of new bonds," she added, smiling at her brother. Eleanor, tears in her eyes, raised her glass. "To Isabel," she said softly, "whose courage and love brought us all here." "To Isabel," everyone echoed, their voices united in gratitude and respect. As the party resumed around her, Amélie stepped away for a moment, watching the scene with a full heart. She saw Ethan playing with the twins, his face lit up with joy. She saw Eleanor laughing at something Olivia had said, the years of guilt finally lifted from her shoulders. And at the center of it all, she saw her mother's legacy, not just in her children's faces, but in the foundation that bore her name, in the strength she had inspired in them all. "Thank you, Mom," Amélie whispered to the air, feeling a peace she had never known before. In that moment, surrounded by the love of her newly discovered and expanded family, Amélie knew she had finally found her place. Blackwood Manor, once a symbol of secrets and pain, was now truly a home. As the sun set outside, casting a golden glow through the windows, the Blackwood family continued their celebration, their laughter and conversation echoing through the corridors. It was more than a birthday party. It was a celebration of a new beginning, of healed wounds, and a bright future built on the foundations of love, forgiveness, and truth. And so, in the mansion that once housed so many secrets, a new story began to be written, a story of redemption, second chances, and the transformative power of family love.